Hi, I'm Randy Altman with Post Perspective. We're here with Tom Burns from Dell EMC or Dell Technologies. Tom, welcome.
Thank you, Randy. Good to be here virtually.
Yeah. So we're not doing NAB in Vegas this year, but we're doing this virtually. Now, you guys were going to introduce or at least show some product at the show. I think that that's been pushed, but can you talk a little bit about that technology?
First of all, I got to say how sad I am. This breaks my streak of 30 uninterrupted NABs. This would have been 31 this year, and it's not happening. You know, we have a number of announcements that I can share with you. Things like, 25 gig Ethernet ports on Isilon. We've already introduced a bunch of new node types, and as well as software improvements like Data IQ, which is the upgraded version of what used to be called Clarity Now. So we have Data IQ, we have the 25 gig NICs, we have a lot of workflow solutions in between file and object, like, Kubernetes is very popular for containerizing and orchestrating compute workloads. But in media, you don't want to put all of your media into a Kubernetes container. You want to keep that in some kind of a persistent storage and have the Kubernetes container be able to access that persistent storage. And so we've got the CSI plugin, container storage interface plugin for Kubernetes directly to Isilon. We've got a bunch of workflow orchestration solutions. I mentioned the data management capabilities that come with Data IQ, which is those reports make every storage admin's job so much easier when you can answer, what have I got? What tier is it located on? How much is it costing me to keep it on that tier? And what do I want to do with it in terms of either through an API or move it, just an operator. Doesn't have to be a storage admin, doesn't have to be a fancy thing. It could be, a production soup who's ready to pre-flight the project and has tagged all their media appropriately and can securely and safely move that off to a lesser tier until they need to open it up again for the sequel or whatever they might need the data for downstream. So there's lots of workflow improvements, hardware and software improvements to OneFS, but the real announcements that we were hoping to make in a Whisper Suite under NDA will have to get pushed about a month or 6 weeks until we go general availability with some of those announcements and are able to promote them separately. Sad that it's not going to be at NAB where we can see all our friends, but nonetheless, we're plowing ahead with software and hardware and workflow improvements.
Fantastic. And you have a post-production background, and you have seen over the last month how studios have sort of been ramping up their remote workflows. A lot of them did already pre-prepare, but some are still working through it now. Can you talk about what you've been seeing and how you think this is going to change the industry going forward in terms of more remote workflows being done?
So it's funny that I'm in Toronto, Canada, and 17 years ago we
You're not in France?
Oh, right. That's right. I'm on my balcony in Paris. That's what I meant to say. So 17 years ago when we had SARS, everybody had to go through this exercise of, can we work remotely? How do you do a post-production session when the director or the DP is not sitting there right in the session telling the artist what to do? I'm not certain that we had it right 17 years ago, but it sure helps to be prepared. Now, the people who aren't prepared are frantically adopting all kinds of either one-to-one remote workflows where you simply take your machine that's under the desk with a node-locked license and using Teradici in most cases, you would remote that back to the artist who's working out of their spare room or their mom's basement or wherever they happen to be at the time. So there's been a lot of that going on, but they always talk about the law of unintended consequences. Wasn't it after the 2011 tsunami where all of a sudden there was no HDCam SR tape to be had? And so producers had to learn to get comfortable with a file-based workflow much quicker, I think, than would have normally evolved over time. So I think we're going to see the second wave of remote work starting to come as a follow-on effect where people realize that actually remoting the machine room, and even if I'm in the facility working with clients, I'm still using the same technology and workflow that I would use in either a one-to-one remote setup where it's just, me, like a KVM, you know, I'm physically separated from the machine, but it's still my machine. And of course, the fully virtualized workflow is the next phase after the one-to-one remote, where I can have a cluster of hyper-converged infrastructure, like for instance, VxRail from Dell, or in some way of being able to spin up a virtual Avid session. Avid, of course, has been very good with having Media Composer VM Edition out for years, and now recently Adobe has decided that virtualization of their platform is a key function for them. So I think we're going to see a lot of fully virtualized. Wasn't it the it was like 3 or 4 years ago when the Joint Task Force on Networked Media delivered their vision of the dematerialized studio, which is what they called it at the time. And of course, we have the Movie Lab's 10-year vision that says that everything's going to be in the cloud in 10 years. I can tell you that Dell and Amazon and everybody else in Hollywood were part of the 12-minute movie that was made in virtually one day on the Super Session. So Joachim Zell had the vision that we would end up using a hybrid cloud workflow. All of the color pipeline and the stuff that came from dailies was fully cloud. All of the afternoon stuff, there was an Isilon there humming along for the color front and the other post-production vendors as part of that. And I think we've showed that you kind of need both sides. You need the cloud for flexibility, especially in Lost Lederhosen's case, when as soon as everybody heard about this project, everybody and their brother piled on to become part of this project. And cloud certainly is the only way to be that flexible to get access to a number of people without having to ship them gear. But when it comes to high single stream, low latency throughput, there's always going to be room for some on-prem, especially in the post side of things. And so we learned a lot from that. We learned a lot from all of this lockdown. We've been learning about things like in-camera VFX, right? Being able to use. I think one of the things we will see after this is that talent may not necessarily want to travel to Bulgaria because it's a cheap shooting location with good tax credits. And I think we may see a lot between volumetric video for the object capture and virtual in-camera LED walls mapped to the nodal point of a physical camera. I think we'll see a lot of those hybrid shooting models simply to avoid having to fly in front of camera talent as well as behind the scenes expertise to fly them around to various shooting locations where just because the tax credits and the cheap cost have cruised. But that's only a temporary prediction. I think, anyway, who cares what I think about coronavirus? But nonetheless, all of these things where people are forced into learning something quicker than they normally would, that's what I mean by the law of unintended consequences.
Absolutely. Adversity breeds innovation, which is
good. That's a great way to say it, Randy. That's excellent.
Tom, it's always a pleasure talking to you.
And you.
And maybe we'll see each other at IBC. I don't think so.
Who knows what's going to happen to IBC, but I think that trade shows are important, not because of the product announcements, not because of the free beer and vendors buying you dinner, but the opportunity to meet people that you haven't spoken to in a year. I was just talking with Stan Moot from the IABM about this, and he and I agree that we're going to keep going to trade shows, even if we have to be masked and gloved to do so, because I really value seeing my colleagues, even if I only see them once a year, and I'm hoping that that doesn't go away. Much as I love talking to you and everyone via Zoom, there's no substitute for in-person interaction.
Agreed, and wholeheartedly on board with that. So hopefully I'll see you in a city somewhere soon.
Look forward to it, Randy.
Take care, Tom.